Big Mom, one of the Yonkos of the sea, a pirate who dominated alongside Kaido, Whitebeard and Shanks. Yet, even though she stood at the very pinnacle of piracy, the fandom doesn't really see her as all that strong. So is she really that weak, or is there something we're missing? Before she even established her own crew, she was part of the Rocks Pirates, a crew with no synergy whose members were in constant competition with one another. This was a roster that included legends like Shiki, Whitebeard and Rocks himself. And still, even among monsters like that, Big Mom was someone to be feared. While she didn't have any insane showings, she was ready to fight Whitebeard and took an attack from dummy reverses back, which shows you that even in her green days, she was a combatant ready to fight characters who were the kings of the world. Years later, she built herself up and only grew stronger, reaching her absolute peak by the time of Wano. Before going into Big Mom specifically, we need to understand what being a Yonko implies for her strength. When Garp met the Straw Hats for the first time, he talked about how Shanks is on the same level as Whitebeard. The context behind that statement is him explaining what a Yonko is, and that Shanks being one of them would put him on the same level as Whitebeard, a pirate considered to be the king of the seas, a rival of the Pirate King, and the man who stood at the peak of the world. And Garp made that statement before knowing about Whitebeard's rapid decline. Following the same line of reasoning, Big Mom should also be considered someone on the same level as Whitebeard, the strongest man in the world. Now, does that mean Big Mom is equal to Whitebeard? I wouldn't go that far, since being a Yonko entails more than just personal strength. It includes territory, crew, notoriety and other factors. And if we look at their bounties, it's fair to say Whitebeard was still above her. Still, to even be considered a rival to such a pirate is no small feat. After Whitebeard died, there was an empty spot for the fourth Yonko. Before the payback war, it was contentious who would become the fourth one. Marco carrying the remains of Whitebeard's legacy, or Blackbeard, the first man with 2 devil fruits and someone who knew about Whitebeard's territory. Marco, if we look at his feats, was able to keep Kizaru at bay. To be fair, Kizaru didn't really go all out, and was able to fight King and Queen simultaneously while even performing somewhat well. And that's just on the stats department. So yes, like Blackbeard or Mihawk, if all you have is power, then you're not good enough to be a Yonko. But without great individual power, you can't be considered a Yonko at all, and someone like Marco simply wasn't enough. Big Mom being a Yonko is already a statement of her might. Her repertoire consists of having all 3 types of haki, as well as the advanced form of Conquerors, an ability only a handful of the strongest possess. Her devil fruit, being the Sorosoro no Mi, allows her to extract souls from people and place them into objects, creating homies, making these objects sentient beings at her disposal. While the condition for that ability to work requires the person to have a little bit of fear, that condition is almost a guarantee when you're confronting her. At the age of 5, she rampaged through Elbaf and beat down its warriors, the very same warriors who were feared in their own right. And the more she grew, the more dangerous she became, reaching up to 880 meters tall, with skin that is nearly impenetrable, almost like Kaido. There's no sugarcoating it, she's a monster. So the requirement for ability is practically a given. She can also use her own soul if she needs to ramp up a bit. With her soul, she creates special homies. Prometheus, a living sun, Hera, the upgrade to the living thunder Zeus, and Napoleon, a massive sword. These are her main weapons. Through them, she has tremendous range. She can amplify them and use them to create her own attacks, like the Mesa Canyon. But thanks to their sentience, they can also attack on their own, leaving the opponent very little breathing room. Not only that, but she can create homies inside her own body, giving her a pseudo healing ability or letting her boost her own power. Before Wano, we don't really see that many showing of hers. During Whole Cake, she was able to overpower Gearfall Luffy, which at the time seemed insane, at least to me. But her true power is seen during Wano. Before the raid, she was able to go toe to toe with Kaido without being at full power, which made the Beast Pirates tremble, and she was able to not only keep up, but split the skies with him, reinforcing her status as a top tier. Depending on how you view a sky split, if you think splitting the skies is the greatest Conqueror's feat, that would mean a weakened version of Big Mom has better haki than someone like Odin. I personally wouldn't go that far, but splitting the skies does show a refined and superior version of Conqueror's Haki. When Luffy first had Conqueror's Haki, it was crude and clumsy, and it wasn't enough for the likes of Kaido. After Luffy's defeat, Yamato had to step in and was able to hold him back in just her base form. Then she transformed and continued holding him off until Luffy came back. He clashed with Kaido and split the skies with him, something that left Yamato in awe. Now maybe you could say Luffy got a hidden power up, or that he was simply more resolved after this defeat, but that would just be guessing. What we do know is that Luffy misused Conquerors, then came back and fought Kaido with the same ability, and Kaido never brings that issue up. This means that a refinement of your Conqueror's coating, demonstrated through something like a Sky Split, can give you a bigger boost than a mythical zone hybrid transformation, fruits whose entire purpose is to grant a massive boost proportional to the animal. Then, the raid happened, the climax of Wano. While the focus was more on Kaido and Luffy's power, we also see Big Mom pull off feats that are impressive. Before getting serious, she used a technique called God of Lightning Tenjin. That attack was so fast that no one on the rooftop was able to successfully dodge it. This includes Luffy, who has future sight, and Law, whose ability lets him move from one place to another. Luffy looking into the future and Law just twirling his fingers, neither could do anything against that attack. For perspective, they had been able to dodge Kaido's attack just prior. When Kaido and Big Mom got more serious, they pulled off a duo attack using the Conquest of the Sea. Usually, when performing a combined attack, both parties need to put an equal amount of force into it, otherwise the attack would be overridden by the stronger persons. So the fact that this attack worked at all means Big Mom was on equal term with Kaido when they made it. That attack was meant to wipe them all out. While Zoro was able to endure it, it was clear that he was done for afterward. And let's not forget, he's an endurance monster. Besides maybe Luffy, no one else would have withstood it long enough for everyone to escape. So the assessment that it should have killed them all isn't that far off. Not only that, but if you look at outside sources, they claim that Big Mom and Kaido together beat the Admirals. Green Bull, Fujitora and Kizaru, characters who get clowned on as weak high tiers. You could go out of your way and try to argue that Big Mom or Kaido could beat them on their own, but if you ask me, I think the point of that source is to show that the two of them combined are unstoppable. That's why Kid and Law were so adamant about splitting Kaido and Big Mom up, and that's why the Navy considers those two together the scariest force you could ever confront. That combined force is exactly what represents in their Ikoku sovereignty. After that attack, Law, Kid, Killer and Zoro were able to disarm Big Mom. Yet even when Law and Kid then confronted a Big Mom who was even more restricted than when she fought Kaido, all they could do was throw her off the island. They didn't try to attack her, no attempt to subdue her or even do real damage. So even in a restricted state, she was still that much of a danger that Law and Kid weren't comfortable going on the offensive. Now you might think, of course they aren't confident, that's Big Mom. But let me ask you this, if Zoro had to fight King and Queen again, only this time without a sword, wouldn't you say Zoro is in trouble and that King and Queen would suddenly be a lot more confident? And let's not forget, Zoro destroyed King when he got serious. So Big Mom, in the same kind of predicament as Zoro in my hypothetical King and Queen matchup, still forced Law and Kid, opponents far stronger than King and Queen, to rely on strategy rather than just overpowering her. While Law and Kid fought Big Mom, it was painfully obvious that they were heavily losing. Now to be fair, half the time Kid got put in a horrible state, but even then there was nothing they could have done to deal meaningful damage to her. Only by using their awakenings were they able to affect her at all. When they did land those awakened attacks, it actually hurt her, which pushed her to transform by drawing on the souls of the others, and from there they were right back to getting beaten up. We all know that in the end, Law and Kid did beat her, but it wasn't simply because they could use their abilities, it was a combination of everything. Big Mom having already taken unnecessary damage beforehand, getting caught off guard, Law and Kid outmaneuvering and outsmarting her with their kits, having the specific tools to strip away her strength, and finally being able to remove her from the island entirely. So let me ask you this, if Shanks were already damaged and then got caught off guard by Law's awakening, how do you think Shanks would fare against Law and Kid? I'm not here to scale Big Mom against the other Yonko, but I do want to point out that not a lot of characters have been thrown into this many wildly different scenarios, forced to adapt on the fly, and still held onto their top tier status. I believe a big part of why she gets overlooked is that Kaido has been put in the same kind of predicament, but against more impressive attacks and fighters, all while never being made to look dumb. Also, I've been dismissing Law and Kid this whole time, but both of them on their own are monsters. After Wano, Law and Kid each had to go one-on-one against another Yonko. Kid vs Shanks and Law vs Blackbeard. And while their performance weren't great, there are still things worth pointing out. Law, while on his own journey, was ambushed by Blackbeard. Using his awakening, he managed to catch Blackbeard off guard and clash directly with the power of the Gura Gura no Mi. Now, One Piece is infamous for its weird, hard to read power clashes, but against Blackbeard I think this is a bit different. That Quake Punch generates tremors that, in the right hands, are capable of destroying the world. So Law wasn't just trading some vague power clash, he went head to head with an attack whose entire purpose is to be world-ending natural disaster. On top of that, we see Blackbeard needing to bring out his Darkness Fruit, which shows that Law could actually match him while he was using the Quake Fruit. And we even see Blackbeard come away damaged. Yes, he won in the end, but being left that hurt by someone against whom he holds both the ultimate offense and the ultimate nullifier shows just how well Law held his own. That's something he came nowhere near doing against Big Mom. Then there's Kid. And yeah, I know, he kind of got destroyed by Shanks and didn't get to show much, but there's still something interesting here. When Kid charged up Damned Punk before Shanks used his future sight, he destroyed 5 ships. That means that in the future Shanks foresaw, Kid was able to attack 5 times before being stopped or even intercepted. Now, I'm not trying to claim Shanks lacks the speed without future sight, he's simply in an awkward position. He needs to leap to reach his ship, which A, puts him in a vulnerable state, and B, has to jump to him instead of running, which is faster. No, the interesting part is with Ben Beckman. In the future, Shanks saw nobody intercepted Kid for those 5 shots, and when you look at Ben's weapon, you'll notice he carries a flintlock rifle. A weapon like that can have a range anywhere from 50 to potentially 250 yards, assuming you're an experienced marksman, which Beckman clearly is. So this isn't a range problem. He doesn't have the same excuse as Shanks because he's a gunslinger. He's neither stuck in a vulnerable state nor lacking the speed. His attacking window should be at its peak. And yet, he still couldn't stop Kid before all 5 shots landed. Now, I know a lot of you are going to scream at me that Kid, the literal magnet guy, could just stop Ben Beckman's bullet. But let's not forget, he couldn't stop Shanks coming down on him with his sword either. And why? Because Shanks' haki was simply too powerful. Beckman may not be as powerful as Shanks, but when you look at his lore, it's kind of crazy that he couldn't stop Kid here. Ben Beckman is someone who managed to pose a real threat to Kizaru. And for reference, Kizaru is the same person who casually dismissed Gear 4 Luffy after Wano. That's the same Luffy who uses Advanced Conquerors. That version of Luffy is the one who pushed Kaido, the beast, to limits. So by the chain, Beckman represents a bigger threat than Gear 4 Conquerors coating Luffy. And that Beckman still couldn't stop 5 shots from Kid. So what does that mean for Big Mom's scaling? When the duo fought her, they made it clear that their last resort moves had to be used strategically, otherwise they'd be wasted entirely. Following the same logic, we can conclude that Big Mom is a far greater threat than Beckman, who himself is a bigger threat than Gear 4 Conquerors Luffy. And that version of Luffy is someone Kaido saw as a worthy challenge. Being able to dismiss a character of that caliber is something only a true top tier can do. Does this mean she can give Gear 5 Luffy a good fight? Maybe. Let me know your opinion down below. Here's the thing. To beat Big Mom, you can't just be strong. You need to be a monster. Because even if you match her in raw strength, that alone is meaningless. Her toughness lets her stay in the fight far longer than you can. She got caught off guard by Law and Kid and still kept fighting. For comparison, Squad managed to stab Whitebeard and the Sea King was able to bite off Shanks' arm. Put Big Mom in either of those situations and she'd shrug it off, recovering with ease or not even feeling it in the first place. And on top of her durability, her abilities would overwhelm you. Even if you're stronger than her, that's still not enough. Let's say Garb is a little bit stronger than Big Mom, just a little bit. Even then, he probably couldn't beat someone as monstrous as her. Big Mom can fight you head on with her sword, but not just that. She can use or even create other homies around her to attack from angles you aren't watching, catching you off guard. And if push comes to shove, she can ramp up her strength drastically and simply overpower you. But okay, let's say you're not relying on strength. Let's say you have a ton of abilities instead. Is that enough? Still no. Because in One Piece world, if you're strong enough, you can outright negate some of their abilities. We saw exactly that play out between Big Mom and Law. Even though Law had the far more versatile, meaningful abilities, Big Mom's sheer strength let her overpower him anyway. For example, Law couldn't teleport her away, a staple of his entire kit, because she was simply too strong for it to stick. So unless you are significantly stronger than her, or you have way more abilities to work with, there isn't really a clean way to beat her. Honestly, it's really shocking how people have such a low opinion on. I mean, come on, who is stupid enough to think Big Mom is weak and is bad? Honestly, when it comes to feats, Big Mom's showing are just poor. Okay, maybe I'm part of the problem, or at least was. Here's the thing. Oda often uses Big Mom as a punching bag and makes her look ridiculous, something he doesn't do with any top tier, not even Luffy. This is why I couldn't respect her much. After looking at her, I realized that when you look past her surface level embarrassing facade, you're left with a monster who would bring almost anyone to her knees.